Moving on, the planning. So in this section, what happens is let's understand how the planning is done in the agile approach. So we all know the key difference between the traditional planning and the agile planning. The main difference is that the traditional waterfall method, they plan for very long durations, which cannot be easily envisioned. So agile doesn't do that. What it does is it does the planning multiple times, in increments based on the feedback that it gets from the sprints. It plans again and then it plans again. All these things happen in small improving steps. So let's get in depth and understand what we are going to learn here. So formally, how to define a plan in the agile approach. So first is that the agile plan is usually trial and error, right? So we don't know what happens after 4 weeks of sprint. So we go ahead and do the plan. We finish the set of activities, and then if this set of activities is not actually helping or actually not moving forward to complete the bigger goal, then the plan is corrected again, and then the reprioritization of the tasks is done. Right? So that is nothing but the trial and error. When we attribute the same to the iterative method, we all know that it is a rolling wave, right? So we have a first wave and then a small wave which talks about daily scrum, right? So and again this cycle repeats after 2 weeks, right? So this is first week, and then a second week scrum happens, and then the third week another scrum happens, right? So all these are iterative items, right? So that is how we have to plan. So and again it has to be progressive or incremental. Whenever we plan, it should not be the same thing we are repeating over and over. We should not run in cycles. So the plan has to be a progressive plan and an incremental plan. The next step is what we should have for the next sprint, right? So don't repeat the same step. And most important thing is that it has to be for shorter duration, because we humans are not capable to envision what happens after 5 years or after 6 years, right? So only great people can do that. Of course, we can hope for the best, but what actually or exactly happens after 3 years or 4 years, nobody can actually predict. Right? We cannot even predict what happens in the next 1 hour. So a lot of uncertainty is there. So as short as possible, the plan has to be in a shorter duration. I think you get the point. And then adaptive based on customer feedback. What it means is that when a customer gives a feedback that something is not defined properly or something is not as per his expectation, the project manager or the complete agile team has to be ready to adapt to that new deliverable. And that is basically all the sprint is about, right? So we do a little progress about the complete project, and then we show it to the customer, and then he says, no, this is not what I was expecting, please change it, right? So if this feedback is received at the very beginning of the stage, only this 2 weeks work is affected. So imagine the complete project being affected versus only the 2 weeks work getting affected. So this is an important feature of the planning. So it has to be always adaptive, and it has to be based on the customer feedback. Moving on, salient features. So these are something which are very important items to consider for planning of the agile sprint. Now, what happens here is the sprint tasks or the backlog tasks, they are considered for to do, right, based on the priority of the project. We discussed this many times. Now, how does the project manager know that a particular item is a priority? So only when she or he can relate these tasks to the final end results, or the so-called salient features. So these are nothing but the broken down values that were given to the organization as targets. So it is important that the features of the end product, they are displayed to the customer, so that the customer gets a fair idea about what he is going to get at the end of a hustle. So sometimes the customer might reject the final result of the project because of his expectations were something else. So during the planning itself, if we envision the values of the product that and what they are going to offer, if we share it with the customer, much in advance, much ahead, the expectations will be set between both the parties. So that's what this is all about. I think we discussed this in the DOD. So now how and what to put in the plan, right? So let's understand this a bit. The agile estimation theory, right? So estimation of work. So what does it talk about? This is nothing but we have to define who should estimate the work, right? So is it the product owner? Is it the project sponsor? Is it the customer? Who should actually estimate the total amount of work? That is the estimation plan. That is one of the component of this estimate. And what methods are there to help with the estimation? Are we working in incremental method or are we working in iterative method? Now, remember, these both are agile methods, right? So, what is the rationale behind this estimate? We have given the work estimate that okay, these are the tasks that we have to do, and why we have to do it. So, the rationale behind the estimates have to be mentioned. When should we actually estimate this, right? So, should we do it today for the coming sprint, or should we do it after 4 or 5 sprints are done? Right? So that sort of planning has to be there. So when we talk about time limit, we need to define the time limit in a sectors or sections only. We discussed that the sprint is going to last from 2 to 4 weeks, right? 4 weeks is the maximum we can do. So what happens here is we are time boxing the activity. So this is the theory of time boxing. The sprint itself is a box of time. So everything that has to happen should happen only within these 2 weeks of time or 4 weeks of time, right? So everything beyond that or everything before that, it doesn't matter for the people who are in that sprint run. So what happens here is that it's a tendency, it's a human tendency. Even the agile book talks about this, that if you are given 2 weeks to do a simple task, you are most probable to do it at the end of 2 weeks only. Even though this work can be done in just one day, if somebody tells you that okay, this work has to be done in 10 days, you as a stakeholder will tend to do it on the 10th day only, even if it is a one day work, right? So you won't do it today and then wait for the 9 days. So it's very rare to happen because we have other priorities all the time, right? So nobody is free, at least not in the organizations. So the main thing here is that if you define that time, if you block that particular time, your mind automatically sets itself that okay, I have to complete this activity, right? So it also happens in the opposite way. Consider a work can be done in 16 days, and then you have given only 2 weeks of time. So your mind automatically starts to calculate itself. You might force yourself to work extra hours, and then you will automatically force yourself to finish the work in 14 days only. Or for example, the 14 all 14 days are not there. 2 weeks means 10 working days. So I think you get the point. So the people who tend to work a little longer, they work shorter, and then people who work very quick, they tend to work in a bit of leisure, right? So but everything will be done within this time boxed frame only, right? So that's an advantage. All right, moving on. You have to tell a story, right? So I think this point also we have discussed before. What happens is at the end of each sprint, you have to write the comments, or how the story has evolved, right? How the task has been closed, starting from the day that was assigned to you to the day that you have closed it. You keep on adding the comments, whatever value you add to the task, you keep on adding. Okay, today I have talked with my counterpart, right? So today this impediment was removed by my scrum, right? So today there was a budget requirement and then it was approved by somebody, and then that is how I am able to achieve this task, right? So this kind of small steps keeps on getting added to these tasks, and that's how a story is formed, right? So and these stories are or should be recorded for both closed tasks and also blocked tasks, right? So that a person who looks at the task, a blocked task, understands what is the main reason behind the task getting blocked. So when we talk about lessons learned, everything that we tell as a story, that becomes a lessons learned for the future generations, or even for you. If you are working in the organization long enough and you want to refer to a task that was done 5 years before, if you followed this storytelling method of the task, if you record everything that you do in the task, that means you get an easy reference to this task, right? And this is recorded and available for us to revisit for any amount of time to come. So things gone wrong and things gone right. TGW means things gone wrong and things gone right. They are recorded and understood with this lessons learned. And of course, project management information system (PMIS), it helps us a lot, in recording all these stories, right? So if you are writing all these things in a physical pen, in a book, with the help of a pen, these are probably going to get lost, right? So it is better to use the electronic media to write all these stories. So who does this planning actually? The product owner. He is the one who actually grabs all the backlog tasks. Development team, they contribute in bringing the backlogs, right? So they have so many ad hoc tasks. So every ad hoc task comes in the sprint meeting, and then it will be discussed in the sprint meeting. And then the scrum master, approves these backlogs to be to-do tasks. So that's all about planning.